you can draw this in Procreate. Let me show you how you can draw this desert campsite in the app Procreate, take you through all the steps, and I'm sure you'll end up with a lovely result. It would be great if you would share it. If you're sharing it on Instagram, then tag me in the image so I'll be able to find your work, because I always love scrolling through all of your tutorial results and seeing so many variations. So please keep sharing. Now for this tutorial, all you need are the brushes that are already in Procreate. The canvas we're working on is 3000 by 2000 pixels, and I have linked a color palette with all the colors we'll be using in the description as always, and of course it's totally free. So then if you're ready, let's get started. Let's start by grabbing our brush. I'd like to go to the inking brushes and use the studio pen, and for the color I'd like to use the fourth color in the first row. The opacity of the brush should be at 100%. You can set the size to around 10%. And now you're going to make like a pointy line from left to right. And make sure that you start all the way on the left. And we'll start at about like 1/4 of the height. So we'll start about here. And you can actually also just make multiple lines. You don't have to do it in one go. Here we'll go a little bit lower, up here, multiple lines, and here we'll go a little bit higher. So we get something like this, and then you can just drag in the color underneath. Next, we are going to work on the sky. We'll make a new layer underneath this one, so we'll tap the plus, and then you need to tap and hold and drag it underneath, and then we'll drop in a color here. We'll drop in this color, first color in the first row, drag it on there. And then let's grab another brush. We'll go to the airbrushing brushes and grab the medium brush. And for the next color, we'll grab this one. Second color in the first row. Let's turn up the opacity to 100%. And for the size, we can go for maybe 12. Let's see. Yeah, 12, maybe a little bit smaller. Let's go for 10. And now let's make some lines here. Just some bands. I hope you can see it while we're coloring this section. Then we'll move on to the next color, the third color in the first row. And we'll place that underneath like this. Then we'll move on to this orange, third color in the second row. And we'll place that underneath here. And then we'll grab the next one, which is this one. The fifth color in the second row, a nice light color. I want that to be over here. And now we are going to blur this. We'll go to the magic wand and then to Gaussian blur and then slide to the right until you get a nice gradient. So it should look something like this. I'm at 30%. I do feel like we can go a little bit lower with the light area, so we can just go to the move and transform tool, the little arrow, and we could set it to freeform and lower this a little bit. I want to push it together a bit. And now we can just make a new layer on top. Let's tap the plus and let's add more of that dark color and that dark blue. So we'll just go over here, fill this area. And then also grab that blue, that second color in the first row, and go over here for some of that lighter, well, not really light, but that, yeah, it is lighter than the top. And then we'll use Gaussian blur again, slide to the right to like 24%, and then tap the magic wand again. Now let's pinch these layers together, the bottom two, and then let's add some more variety. Let's grab a soft brush and grab that lighter blue, third color in the first row. Now the opacity of this brush is at 60%, and let's set the size to 8%. And now we can add a little bit more of this lighter blue here around the edges. Add some variety so that it's not that really straight line. I'm just wiggling a bit. I think that looks better. Just some wiggles. And now let's add a nebula cloud. We'll tap the plus for a new layer, And then we'll tab the N and set this layer to add, which is great for adding lighting effects. And then for our brush, we'll go to the luminance brushes and use the Nebula brush. Then for the color, let's grab this one, fourth color in the first row. And let's make the brush smaller. I think maybe 15%, let's see. Maybe even smaller. 8%, the opacity is at 100. And now let's make a diagonal shape like this. It's always a bit of a surprise how the colors will look when using this brush. And I'm leaving a little bit of a gap here in between. So something like this. And I want to change the color a little bit. I want it to match with the blue a bit more. So we can go to the magic wand and then to use saturation brightness and then use the slider to find a color that matches a bit more. I want it to be a bit more bluish. We can turn down the brightness a bit, play around with the opacity. I think this looks nice. So I'm at 32%, 39, and 45. And to shape it even more, you could add a layer mask to this layer. You could tap the layer, add a mask. And then for your brush, you can go back to the airbrushing brushes and use the soft airbrush, for instance. Set it to black. Make the brush a bit bigger. Let's say 40%. The opacity, let's set that to 60. And then with some wiggling motions, you could shape the clouds a bit more. These nebula clouds add this more pronounced gap here in between. As long as you wiggle, you'll keep that nice cloud shape. Next, we are going to add a bunch of stars, and we'll do that on our background layer. And for the brush, I'd like to go back to the luminance brushes, and I'd like to use the glimmer brush, but I'd like to adjust it a little bit. So let's tap it, and then let's turn up the spacing to max, turn up the jitter as well. And let's also go to color dynamics and turn up the hue stroke jitter. So with every stroke, you'll get a slightly different hue. It's at 11%. And then tap done. Now the opacity should be at 100%, and I'll set the size to like 20%. Then for the color, let's grab this blue, third color in the first row, and then let's go ahead and add a bunch of stars. Now the harder you press, the bigger they will become. Try to focus on the darker area at the top. Until you have a sky full of stars. Then we'll add some extra stars on a separate layer. Let's put it on top of this one. Let's tap the plus here. Then for our brush, we could use the studio pen, for instance, as long as it has crisp edges. And for the color, we'll grab this one, sixth color in the second row. Now we are just going to add some basic star shapes. They can be pretty simple. Just color them in. Give them these pointy ends. And you could also do this. Create a shape, starry shape like this, tap edit. And then you can fill the color, fill the shapes. Use continue filling here. And then grab the brush again. And if you need to make adjustments, get rid of some parts for these stars, just tap and hold the eraser. So your eraser will switch to the studio pen. And then you can make some parts a bit more crisp or get rid of unnecessary parts, tidy it up a little bit, and then continue making some different stars. You could also go for something like this, or this. Just try out some different things. Maybe some over here. I want this one to be the main star. I feel like this one might be a little bit too big. And what you can do is just go to the selection tool, the S-shaped ribbon, set it to freehand, select that star like this, then go to the move and transform tool, the little arrow, set it to uniform, and then just make it a bit smaller. Move it around, and then just tap the brush if you want to continue adding more little stars. I think this should be enough. Now let's make them glow. We are going to do that by going to the magic wand and then to bloom, and then we'll slide to the right to make them glow. You can play around with the settings, with the size of the glow, and with the amount of burn. I think something like this looks nice. I have the bloom set to 53%, the size at 25, and the burn at 47. Next, let's add a few clouds to our sky. Let's tap the plus for a new layer. And then for our color, let's grab this one, 5th color in the first row. And I want to add some simple cloud shapes with flat undersides. So these are these wispy clouds. Maybe some wobbles at the top, flat underside. Some are behind these hills. Some are a bit smaller, some are bigger. Just make a nice bunch. And now let's drag in the color. Let's tap continue filling and then tap in these areas. Now this one has a gap, so I need to tap the brush, close the little gap, and then try and drag the color in again. Maybe we can make an extra little cloud over here and drag in the color. Just make sure that you don't have any gaps anywhere. You can dive in, check that out. I think this looks good. I'd like to blur them a bit. We'll go to the magic wand, and this time we'll use motion blur, and just drag your pen to the right. Make sure that you go in a straight line to the right and not up to create a little bit of motion blur. Not too much. Let's go for, let's say 25%, and then tap the magic wand again. All right, now that we have our starry sky, we can start working on our foreground, on the landscape. Let's start by going to this layer, tap it, and then turn on alpha lock. So we can add a little bit of a gradient here. Let's first grab this color, 2nd color in the first row. And for our brush, we'll go back to the airbrushing brushes and use the soft brush. The opacity of this brush is at 60%. Let's set the size to 15. And then let's go over these sides, darken those up a little bit. And here on this side as well. Just make some wiggly motions. Then we'll go to the center area. I'd like to lighten it up a little bit there. We'll grab this color, 5th color in the first row. And we'll make some rounded motions here in the center. Lift your pen every once in a while. And then let's also add a bit of this orange, 3rd color in the 2nd row, and go over the center area. Just a little bit, because that's where all our campfire will be. By the way, if you want to learn even more about Procreate and dive into hundreds more tutorials, get hundreds of brushes, and learn how to create this spider web, for instance, then go check out my Patreon. It's the perfect place if you're starting to get a Procreate tutorial addiction. So it will be great to see you there. But now let's move on. Now let's make a new layer on top of this one. Let's tap the plus, and then we'll go back to the inking brushes and grab the studio pen. And then for the color, we are going to use this one. 3rd color in the 3rd row. And we are going to make our foreground shapes. First, I'd like a rounded shape here. And another one over here, quite big. It's like a big cactus, rounded cactus. And then we'll make a wobbly line. We'll go lower here, close to the edge, and then up here, and connect it. And then we can drag in the color. Then we'll make another layer underneath this one. So first we need to tap this layer, then we'll tap the plus, and then for the color, we'll go to the left, we'll go to that second color in the third row. Then we'll make another line, start about here, wobble our way down, go behind here, then back up. Just wiggle your way all the way to the other side, so make sure that the lines are connected to the sides of the canvas, and then drag in the color. And then for another one, we'll make another layer underneath this one. So first tap layer 1 again, then tap the plus, and then grab this color. First color in the third row. And we'll start all the way on the left, go behind this hilly shape, go through the center. We're wobbling less now, all the way to the right, and then drag in the color. And now we are going to add some details to these areas. We are going to add some cacti. Let's start in the foreground. Let's go to our layer 7 again, grab that dark color, third color in the third row, and I'd like to make some big cactuses. We'll start here, go up, 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 then back down, and we'll give it like an arm, like this. And then over here, maybe it has a little wobble. And an extra part. And then drag in the color and use continue filling. And then just tap your brush again to continue making more of these shapes. Now, I do feel like it's a shame that this one is covering one of the stars. So we could go to the stars layer and then grab the selection tool, select the star over here, and then go to the move and transform tool and move it a little bit to the right. And then just tap the arrow again to get out of here. Then go back to the top layer. And then let's make another cactus over here. Go up, then back down. Little arm over here. And one a little bit lower. And then drag in the color. And you can use continue filling like this. And then tap the brush. Since it's such a dark piece, it might be hard to see. So let me turn off these layers for you, the other hill, so we can focus on this one and you can more easily see what I'm doing. Let's also add some spike-like shapes here to this cactus here. Just some spikes. And we can also add some plants. Just adding some interest to this like silhouette of the foreground. Here we can also add some like grass. Maybe a tuft over here. Maybe a bigger one here. And some spikes on this cactus as well. Maybe some grass here. Now I'd also like to add some highlights to these cacti. So let's tap this layer and then turn on alpha lock. Then we can grab a light color, this one. That's the 5th color in the 2nd row. And then I'd like to go along the edges, adding a bit of a highlight. And over here. Put them on the left sides, in this case. Also a little highlight here. And for this cactus, it needs to be on the right side. Because here in the center, we'll have that campfire. And for this one, I'm going to rotate my canvas. Makes it easier to create a line like this. Little highlight. And then we'll move on to that next layer. Let's turn that on, layer 8. And let's go to that layer and then grab that color. That's the second color in the third row. And we are going to fill this area with some cacti as well. Just try to like fill in some gaps. Think about the placement. Well, that's a bit too far to the left. And another one over here. And you can either drop in the color to fill these shapes, or you can fill them by hand. These aren't too big, so filling them by hand is also an option. And it's okay if your cacti are a little bit wobbly. They don't have to be perfect. Let me drag in the color for this one and use continue filling. And then grab the brush, maybe could add another one over here. And let's also add some grass on this layer as well. Just some tufts, some patches of grass or some little bushes. And then I want to add a few highlights. So let's tap this layer, turn on alpha lock, then grab that light color again, that fifth color in the second row, and then just a few little highlights on these cacti that will be close to the fire. All right, then let's turn on layer 9. Let's go there. We can add a few cacti here as well with this first color in the third row. Maybe one in between, small one. And over here we have some space. And perhaps one over here. Let's also add a few that are a bit more faded in the background. So let's make a new layer. Let's do that on top of this one. We'll tap the plus and then make some more of these cacti. Maybe there's one just like this. But I want these to be a bit more faded. I can barely see that one. But I want to lower the opacity of this layer. So we'll tap the N and then slide to the left to around 40% to really make these faded cacti like this. That will give the scene even more depth. Then we'll move on to our campfire. We need to make a layer on top of this one. We'll tap the plus, and then for our color, we'll grab this one, third color in the third row. And let's go in here. And first, let's make like a block shape. Perhaps it's a box. Let's make the brush a bit smaller. Let's set it to 4%. So we have this box shape. And then we have like these, well, this wood. These are just little lines actually. Just the logs of wood. And then maybe here is like a rock. Another undefined shape. Something like this. And then we can start adding the fire. We'll do that on a layer underneath this one. So we'll tap layer 9 and tap the plus. And then for our color, we'll grab this one, 5th color in the 2nd row. And then we are going to create a flame shape. Just by making these lines going up. Wiggly lines. Keeping it very simple. And then let's just blur this slightly. Let's go to the magic wand and to Gaussian blur. Set it to like 1%. Then tap the brush. And then let's also add some cinders flying around. Maybe a few more over here. And then we need glow. We need glow underneath this layer. So we'll go to this one, then tap the plus. And then let's first grab this color, 2nd color in the 2nd row. For the brush, let's go to the airbrushing brushes. And I think we can stick with the soft brush. Let's make it a bit smaller, 5%. And then let's go behind our fire, make a bit of a circular motion. I'll zoom out a little bit. So circular motion, then we'll go to a lighter color. We'll grab the orange, 3rd color in the 2nd row, closer to the fire. And then even lighter with the 4th color. Very close to the fire. And maybe we can add more of that red to the edges. Let's go to the 2nd color again. Add a bit more over here. Some more glow. And then we are going to add a layer mask to this layer. We'll tap it and we'll add a mask. And then we'll go to this layer mask and we'll paint on it with black. Let's grab like the medium brush would be nice. Let's make it a bit smaller, like 4%. The opacity is at 100. And we're going to cover this area again. That underground. So don't go over that like sky area, just over here. And then for our brush, I'd like to go to the calligraphy brushes and use the brush pen. And we are going to set our color to white now by double tapping here. And now we can paint that light back in. Now the opacity of this brush is at 100%. Let's set the size to maybe 15. Let's check that out. I think that's pretty nice. Let's make some horizontal motions like this. And leave some gaps in between. That will give some texture to the underground. Add more strokes close to the fire. And then we need some shadow coming from the box and these objects. So we need to switch to black again by double tapping here. And then you can make like a diagonal line here. A little shadow and over here as well, stretching outward. And now we can check it out from a distance. I think it looks like a super cozy campfire. And with this, you have reached the end of this tutorial. Don't forget to share your work, and then I would love to see you next time for the next video.